for a lot of people who want to go into broadcast journalism, they don't necessarily think about writing as being as important an element, but I actually think it's crucial and probably one of the most important things. I mean, all those silly things like, reading a teleprompter and all the kind of basic nuts and bolts things are things you can learn easily, but writing is something which really takes a great amount of time to learn how to write in your own voice and to kind of find your own voice. And I think that's why something like this is so important. Is the more you write, the more you're able to figure out what your voice is and be able to write and communicate in that voice. And the reason that's important for broadcast journalism certainly is you want to sound like yourself when you're talking. And if you can't write in your own voice, you're going to end up reading other people's words and you're going to end up sounding like everybody else. And nobody's ever succeeded by sounding like everybody else. It's very easy to, in a situation, say like Hurricane Katrina, reporting that, it's very easy to overly dramatize something and to try to inject emotion into it or inject compassion into it. And once you start doing that, it's disastrous because you end up, like some people you see on TV who are, if something's really dramatic, you just need to get out of the way of it. And as a writer, less is more. You don't need to add drama into a situation. You need to extract yourself and have it be as Spartan as possible and as spare as possible in terms of the writing. Just describing, if something is truly dramatic, describing what you are seeing will be enough. You don't need to kind of try to add to the drama. When you try to add to the drama, you end up looking like a jerk and sounding really cheesy, and you end up like one of those reporters who like grabs a baby and shoves it in front of the camera and is like, "Look at this baby." And but if instead, you just allow the subjects to talk and allow the subjects to communicate and communicate the drama, then there's very little you need to do. The mistake is kind of stepping between the camera and the subject, or between the subject and the written page. You just need to be a conduit for all that you're seeing. The biggest threat, actually, to sort of the marketplace of ideas is just the business of news, and you now have, for instance, in the cable universe, you have CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, and Fox clearly has a viewpoint. MSNBC clearly has the alternative viewpoint. They're now just based on, after years of searching and failing at many things, they've latched onto a business model which is actually working very well for them, which is very liberal, slanted newscasts, and that's basically what they're doing across the board now in their evening programming, and they're doing very well with it. So CNN is sort of considers itself in the middle of the road, trying not to be left or right, but trying to present different sides. And so it's interesting to me, as someone who's not interested in opinion-based news, it's kind of a worrying trend that what the market is increasingly demanding and supporting is very slanted news, whether it's left or right. And if one is interested in kind of a marketplace of ideas, then you're actually seeing less and less in that, less and less of it. And I think you don't see sort of as big an exchange of ideas anymore. You see people yelling at each other on television, and it's creating drama, but it creates heat, but not necessarily a lot of light. To me, my job is to find out what is truthful and what is factual. I'm less interested in opinion. You can shave facts in many different ways, and there are good people who have completely divergent viewpoints, and both have elements of truth in them. It tends to be where you put the emphasis or your viewpoint. But I do think there are things which are facts, and I do think finding that, regardless of what side of the political aisle those facts lie on, is what I view my job as. I think it's a mistake to look at everything through the prism of liberal or a liberal viewpoint or a conservative viewpoint. I think you end up in order to subscribe to a particular viewpoint, you tend to end up ignoring details of the alternate viewpoint in order to make your case, and I think that's a mistake.
Going off what you just said, journalistic bias is an issue that is of interest to me.
Sure.
To what extent do you think it's possible for journalists to report without bias?
I think it's possible. I think the way it's of a huge concern to me, and it's something that I spend a good part of my day talking about with people I work with on a story-by-story basis, and making sure that we're trying to look at things from as many different viewpoints as possible. I think the only way you can avoid the bias is by instituting rigorous process in which in which you have people at different viewpoints commenting on and discussing a story, like you get in a classroom. You know, it's important in a newsroom to have these discussions and to have these arguments every single day and several times a day. And it's kind of boring and tedious a lot of the times, and it becomes argumentative. But it's only through having somebody who's, you know, in New York it tends to be, you end up with a lot of people who are, you know, live in New York on the Upper West Side and all kind of have the same mindset. If you have all those people sitting around a room, you know, they're going to come up with the exact same ideas based on what they've read in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal that day. But if you have people from geographically different areas and you know, politically different areas, you end up with a much more interesting conversation, just like in a classroom. So the only way, I think, to really overcome bias, which is, you know, even a good individual who sets out to not be biased, you know, it's natural to end up looking at something from a particular way. So the only way to overcome is to not just have it be that individual, to have it be a group of people.